did. Took a barge and made it into a home. It was phenomenal. Holy shit. But not here. Yeah.
Somebody grab it by here.
I just started using it this morning. So I just grabbed it and we're gonna need more triggers.
Great. Okay, let's rock and roll. Meeting order, we have forum. Reading and approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Most meeting seconded, additions, corrections, comments. All in favor? Aye. Oh. Roll it over to Mike to introduce staff, please,
Sure. Yeah, we can do
so
so.
we can go back to work.
Sure. So I'll start way down at the other end of the table. That is Peter King. He's our new analyst, having joined us over the last month here. We also have to his left, Lauren McGrecka. She's our new marketing manager. She also started over the last month. Straight across from Lauren is Katie Moran, who many of you may be familiar with. She is our new bookkeeper / office manager. And she also has joined our staff over the last month. Want to make sure that our new staff members had a chance to introduce themselves to the board here today and do a little all welcome them.
Nice.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah.
And Maureen's still here.
At the end, we have Carl Runquist, the director of the water.
I thought, fine. Okay, I'm Ray Lockwood. I'm chairman of the IDA board.
Andy Reinfuss, the board member.
John Latnishin, board member.
Gina Spino, board member.
Elaine Buffington, the auditor.
Katie Moran.
Rick Delgado, the attorney for the IDA.
Once again, Carl Reinfuss, the Q County Water and Sewer Authority.
Peter King, analyst.
Lauren LaGreca, marketing manager for CETA. Maureen Raster, economic development specialist for CETA.
Paul Lattimore, board member. Herb Marshall, board member.
Shay, legislative board member. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to turn it right over to Elaine
Okay.
to tell us how great we're doing.
Okay, so everybody should have received a copy of the financial statement. What I'm going to do is just do an overview of the financial statement. But if any of the board members have questions, concerns, want to have a discussion, please feel free to interrupt me and we can do so. This year, the audit was a little bit challenging with all the staffing changes. There were some issues with some of the records and with the bookkeeping. Things, some entries that we needed to make. At the end of my presentation, I'm going to go through the findings that we had and some of the correction items. And we can discuss them as we go. I want to thank Mike. I know Mike, we kind of hounded him a lot for a lot of questions and information, and he was great. He got us back information very timely. I want to thank him for all his cooperation. As far as the financial statements, they are in draft right now. In our findings, there's an area that the management needs to respond and give a description of what they're going to do to correct the problem. Mike, I'm sure, is working on some of the wording. He has some examples to use, so he can, once he gives that information back, we can go ahead and finalize the audit. But it's pretty much, there's a few little edit items, but it's in pretty good shape. We did have two findings, and we had one control deficiency that we're going to talk about. And let's kind of get started here. The financial statements, as we go through them, the very first part of the statements, there's the management discussion and an analyst. That's written. This is written by Mike. We help him draft these, and if there's any changes or any corrections, that he can look through them and make sure that we get those. But this is a summary of what the organization has done for the year. and also gives ideas of what happened, or information as to what happened. So as far as pilots, programs, agreements that you entered into during the fiscal year. On page 8 starts the financial statement. This year you had a good year, a really good year. Some bookkeeping issues, but as far as your operations, it went very well. Your total assets increased from 1,600,000 to 1,000,000, over 1,000,008. So a very strong year, about $230,000 increase in your total assets. The main areas of increase for the year were in your cash. You had with the strong operations and profits, you added into your cash. And also there was a CD that had come due that you also added in cash. So you had a very strong, cash position at this time. As far as your capital assets during the year, you added more into the sewer project. It's ongoing and it's continuing to accumulate. One of the other items that I wanted to talk to about the capital assets was the 2 land contracts that you had during the year. This is really important. We talked a little bit about it last year. The records that you have that detail out what your land and building is on your balance sheet. You don't have detailed records for that. Over the years, you purchased items, you may have sold items, but it's really important for the agency to go back and reconstruct what the detail is of the item, that 542,000. Now you've got 2 contracts out right now, and this is why I'm concerned about it. You have two land purchase contracts out right now, and they're going to be taking up a good portion of that land, or a good segment of that land, and you don't know what the basis is for the sale. So it really needs to be done before those options are.
How can we not know what the big?
Over changes in staffing, changes in auditors. When we took this over a few years ago, we didn't get detailed records of what the land and building were. All we got is a total that was audited and is carried forward. So we have no records of it. It's something that really should be maintained for the agency.
How do you get a handle on that?
There's no such thing as all you gotta do is make up stuff now.
Well, no, I think you can go back through, you can go back through the tax records.
This far, if she doesn't have anything to put down, where is she gonna get anything?
Basis would be what we bought.
What you purchased it for. So what
We purchased this
Right.
for, plus what we put into it.
Right.
we've got records of what the construction
Could
of
we put
progress. for the
roads and
sewer
other
is.
stuff into it,
Yeah.
but if Mike doesn't have that, who has it? Treasurer maybe.
It has,
No,
to-
I don't mean to pick on you.
there might be some
Yes,
initial
I do.
records. Herb, it's gonna take some digging, is what it's gonna take some time and it's gonna take some digging. You can go back through, what parcels you own and what you own, you can go back and go through a tax search and find out what you paid for those. It's the first thing I would do.
Let me ask though, how?
Not relevant.
Yeah, how relevant is it given that we don't pay taxes,
You don't pay taxes, but you're selling 2 parcels,
right?
hopefully in
We're selling
2020.
it at market price, not at cost.
Right, but you have to determine what the gain on the sale of that property is, and that has to come off your books because you sold it.
But to Herb's point, you might as well make the number up at this point.
Well, that's a bad thing to say, but there's no other way of doing it.
No, I
John?
didn't, and no, I do, I think there is, I think what you do is you go through what parcels you own. What the tax numbers are that are for those pieces of property.
Yeah.
And you go look into the tax records and see what they were
No,
purchased for.
we can determine what we paid
And-
for.
and then-
But
Yeah, it's,
we don't know how much we put into it.
well, the difference is gonna be what you put into it. Right?
Well, there's no sense of,
Yeah,
it's the way it is.
Right.
Right.
Now, the reason we need a basis for that, it's got nothing to do with tax problem, because we don't pay tax.
But for financial statement purposes,
The
You need-
financial Statement will
you need
have to
to-
show a basis for what we
It's
are
gonna-
selling.
It's gonna have to show the gain
Yeah.
on the sale. of the-
Now,
of the
we have
property.
sold a number of parcels off of that farm. How did we deal with them before?
Unfortunately, that was prior to me.
That was prior to you? You have not been doing
No.
this when we had any of the sales?
I
No,
don't think so.
no,
Those sales were. Were
Why?
bad,
But the records must
Yeah.
have fallen through you.
they did not. They did not. The previous account did not, when we asked for the records, this information, they said that they didn't have it. All they had was what was on the financial statement.
Steve might have some,
I was thinking Steve too.
yeah.
So, and you know,
We'll work with him.
it can be done. It's really, it's just gonna take a little time. That's all.
Well, okay, we bought the parcel as one big parcel, we've subdivided it. We just have to look at how it was allocated when we sold the two, I think it was 2 lots to Cuba Milk and the 1 lot to Grover. And it was probably allocated at that
We
time.
sold a number of lots. We sold the Johnson paper one, we sold the other one that, there's been a
Yeah.
number of lots that were sold. And I can't imagine that this would not have come up.
But the more pertinent ones are the ones in the same, at the end of the at the half circle there, which is the 2 to Cuba Milk that we already sold 20 some years ago and or thereabouts, and Grover.
I'll work with Steve. I'll try to get some.
So you'll make them up yourself?
Nobody would say it.
It's gonna recreate them. It can be recreated.
Okay.
If we continue on down through the liability section, there is an increase here in accounts payable. That entire amount consists of funds that were for the Highlander construction for materials that were purchased.
Yes.
And that was outstanding at the end of the year. Grant, as far as your grant, the grant payable, we've talked about this again. And Mike and I have talked about it. This is $10,000 has been on your books for several years now.
This for the-
And that's the Clarity
Matters?
Connect, yes, Connect Clarity Project. And it's a pass-through grant that you received the funds for when Clarity Connect gives you the paperwork to show that it was properly. It meets the terms of the grant, then you can pay the money, but they have not given you those. That paperwork yet. So again, just something else to follow up on to make sure that at some point, either you get the money or you give it back to the granting agency.
Oh, I don't like that idea. Just keep it.
Wow.
John, do you understand?
Yeah.
And that can be taken care of already?
Oh, I don't know.
So we don't lose. that?
I thought.
It's really not your
It's
money.
not our money.
It's not your money.
My preference almost would be to send it back to
Yeah.
the granting agency. If they don't want to bill us for this, we're just waiting for a bill.
Right.
We should get it off our book.
Yeah, I would
Yes.
almost send it back to the agency that gave us the money and then
Let them deal
be
with
done,
it.
let them deal with it.
This has got nothing to do with the current grant that we
No.
have.
No.
We have not.
This is gonna be 10
Just
years
wait.
old.
Oh, my gosh, it's
Oh.
again,
It's,
it's
yeah,
old.
it's old. That was for the southern part of the
I don't
county
think it ever happened, right?
or something. I don't know.
Internet stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'll work with Mike on that.
Yeah.
On the statement of revenue expenses, again, a very good year. Your total operating revenue was 266,000. There was 168,000 from administrative fees due to the projects that you had during the year. And there were 2 land option fees of 97,000, a little over 97,000. So really good year. As far as your expenses, operating expenses were 83,000, which left you a profit for the year of 182,000. So really successful year. Interest income and land rent for the year added to that, giving you a final profit of $188,000 for the year. Questions?
The payments to Highlander, you mentioned, they all came this calendar year, not last calendar year, right?
They were due in 2022. And the materials that were delivered in November of 2022. So you
And we
took
paid-
possession of them.
And
You didn't pay for them. So that's sitting in payables. You didn't pay for them until
this year,
this year.
yes,
Yes,
okay,
yes. But they're sitting, those were materials for the sewer project.
yes.
So you're not gonna see that on the statement of revenue expenses that went into the construction in progress. Okay. Any more questions on operations? I just want to go through a couple footnotes on page 14, talks about the pilots. You had 9 pilots at the end of the year. You collected $434,000 in pilot payments and remitted them to the respective governmental agencies.
Where are you?
I'm on page
Oh,
14.
okay, middle, okay.
Yep. On page 15, note 6 gives the details of the land options. Again, as I said, there were 2 land agreements. The first agreement, you received a fee of about $25,000 to purchase land for $232,000. If this agreement goes through, there will be an administrative fee paid at the time of closing of $168,000. The second agreement had a fee of $72,000 for a land purchase of $648,000. And subject to adoption of a pilot, the administrative fee on this is projected to be $440,000. So a couple of really, really big projects going on. What I really want to talk to is there were 2, I'd mentioned at the very beginning that there were 2 findings that we had. They were determined to be material weaknesses. So they're significant in amount. The first one is when we were testing your accounts payable, that we found that amount for about $52,000 for the Highlands settlement was not booked into your general ledger. So we made that adjustment. So what's really important that agreement had 30-day terms. So that amount should have been paid by the end of December. It wasn't even in your general ledger. So having proper procedures to make sure that bills get input into your general ledger so that you can actually pay them and know they exist is really important as far as an internal control and accounting process. So our recommendation is that there be proper internal controls and establish record keeping and processing of all expenses on a timely basis.
We have an amount that we withheld that goes with that payment, that we have a thing to pay that today. That will be this year instead of last year.
I'm not aware of that.
We withheld whatever the percentage was from their payment for the first phase of the sewer project.
Okay,
And they have billed us, and I think Mark, I don't know if he's approved it. Is it not on the agenda?
It is, yeah.
Today.
Okay.
So
so that was a retainer,
A
retainer,
retainer. I
okay.
didn't use the
Okay.
right term.
A retainer.
Yeah.
And how much was that?
Oh, in the neighborhood of 5,000. If you're right.
It was a $4,700 round numbers.
Okay.
It's not
Okay, so the good thing about that, it's not material to the financial statement, so it's not something that I would go back and do a journal entry for. Or change these financial statements for,
Okay.
but the proper accounting treatment would have been to record that retainage payable on your books.
That's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
It should have been part of the original.
Absolutely,
First phase of the sewer project.
yes.
Elaine, other than the 52,000, did you discover any other payables that were not?
No.
Okay, good.
No,
So
that's
this is just a one-time.
just a one
but
item.
It was material.
But what we're seeing in the record keeping, and I know it's because there were a lot of transitions during the year. is that things just weren't getting processed timely. Okay. So it's really important to make sure that the things do get processed. And, you know, the final check is really this board here. You know, you should be looking at these and making sure that those amounts are sitting in payables, because you're hearing about them on a monthly basis and you're seeing them. The second item, we discovered that there were multiple receivables that were recorded more than once. Your accounts receivable were really not correct at all. Receivables actually had a negative balance in the general ledger, and it should be a positive. Well, actually, in your case, the receivables should have been zero. Receivables typically have a negative balance. The amount that we had to adjust was $243,000 and a little change. So again, we had given Mike some procedures of how to record the amounts for pilots coming in and going out. So that will help Katie set up proper bookkeeping for this going forward.
So Elaine, would you say that this was just an issue with the pilots? It was just confined to the pilot payments?
Yes, and the bookkeeping issue, you know, the bookkeeper really didn't understand what she was
The
doing.
pilot payments, okay.
Do we need to have a full review of those transactions?
You mean as a board? Or we reviewed, we did a detailed review of them to make sure that everything was correctly stated. So, you know, we're confident. We went through them pretty carefully to make sure that what was collected was paid. And what's on the financial statement. You collected all the pilots by the end of the year, you did all the pilot payments out by the end of the year.
And if need be, Elaine, would you be amenable to working with Caden if we need to?
Oh, absolutely. Anytime, you know, have questions or.
Well, to set it up,
Yeah.
so we do it correct right from the beginning.
Yeah. The last item we didn't put in because it isn't a material weakness, it's a control deficiency, is that our entries that we provided last year did not get recorded on your general ledger. So when we went to start this year's work, the retained earnings that did not roll forward, and so we ended up booking that again. So again, you really need to have a process in place for year-end closing. The entries were, you know, I did double check to make sure that the entries were provided, and they were provided. They just never got recorded.
I'm not sure this is the right place to do it, but if we're gonna continue to have new treasurers all the time, what position does the board need to have to make sure that this is? I'm not sure that have the time or capable of doing our bookkeeping. Are you, John?
No, well, let me, Elaine, would this be? You've done the audit for how long with us?
I think 4, maybe 5 years.
You'd say this is the first year that you've run into these issues?
There's been little issues every year.
Little, but not
But
material.
not as material as these items.
Okay, so would you say that it's not usual for this organization to have these type of material issues?
Yes.
So
The more important issue is that there's got to be controls, and that the board has to have oversight to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again.
That's what we need to, not necessarily now, we'll discuss how we're gonna have oversight for this.
Okay.
Hopefully, we have a treasurer that's gonna stay 20-30 years, but that's not necessarily so.
She's sitting right there. I think he's on
The
track.
bookkeeper?
That's right, literally, she's sitting right there.
I'm
20,
not-
30
I'm
years.
not-
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
So let me clarify. Yeah, no.
Yes.
So she is the bookkeeper, but, and she gives the information, but the treasurer of the board should be looking at that. You know, there has to be management oversight into what she does, that it's been done correctly. And this was not done on Katie's watch.
No.
Katie just started, so, well, I want to make, well, I want to make time for, anybody that doesn't know that Katie just started.
Right.
You have some viewers.
It's not a people issue,
It is not.
it's just that we've been, like you say, going through staff changes.
I think, that, all of this is due to staff changes. But it still needs to be.
Right, and there's no malice.
No, we did not find anything like that, no.
But you're right, Herb, we need some time.
Do you have a finance committee that meets regularly? Okay. So that's where it can be addressed. Questions, any questions for me?
We need a vote to accept.
Second, Herbie made the motion.
Before we do that, though, can I
Sure.
ask
You motion made.
Whoever-
Do it after we do that, that's the appropriate time to ask.
Yeah, discussion.
I was gonna ask people to leave.
Me?
Yeah.
I was gonna ask Mike for you and Katie to leave and anybody else for a minute that's not
Other staff.
associated with the staff, yes.
You want an executive session?
No.
Okay.
I.
No,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
quite,
well,
it's quite common that,
it'll be recorded, so
Yeah,
can we,
Do you want to save that for executive session?
Yes, let's,
but then I need a lane here. Is why I wanna do this now.
Do a quick executive session.
yeah, let's do, I'd make a motion for an executive session. For John.
Second.
I'll
it
second
is
it.
quite common that boards.
What's the purpose of the executive session?
Uh,
Personnel or,
I wanna discuss.
Recommend personnel and to
Discuss the
receive attorney,
yeah, attorney-client discussions,
Okay.
yeah.